All right, so I'm Cash Butler. I have a couple of companies that I've integrated. I have R3, which is a legal operations consulting company, doing digitization basically of legal departments. I have a Legal Business World electronic magazine for the legal department. It's got a worldwide exposure. It's content marketing for vendors and for advertising, sponsors, thought leadership, and things like that. And I've also been in legal tech for about 30 years. It's my second career. I started out in banking, so hardcore business, where we use things like KPIs religiously to align with our support function to the business. But yeah, about 30 years, sold a couple companies, built and sold a couple companies in legal tech. It's been a fun ride. Well, all very good and interesting question, because there's not a lot of uniformity, particularly in the legal world. From the business world, it's important that every single KPI you have aligns with organizational goals. They are not meant to, they certainly have to satisfy departmental goals, but those departmental goals need to satisfy something bigger, the organization itself. We're all in support functions. IT departments, sales departments, legal departments. All of our KPIs, all of our goals and objectives need to align to grow the business, to protect the business. So when you're thinking about KPIs, think about how and work with your business partners and the various departments you support. Sales probably is the key one for a legal operations department. What does shortening the turn time on a contract, a sales contract, what does that mean to the business? Well, it should help close more deals and faster. Well, that's got a positive revenue number to it. That helps the business. Alternatively, contracts get stuck in the contract process, and it may be legal, it may be the business. Don't ever want to point fingers, because generally it's a combination of folks. That's not good for the business. Deals walk out the door if you can't execute fast. The people who are in the middle of this stuff get frustrated. So you just want to make sure all of your KPIs satisfy a business, the umbrella organization, but they also satisfy the internal departments that have to deliver to these KPIs. And by the way, they also have to be reportable, achievable. You don't just make these things up and then try to figure out how to report about them. You build an infrastructure that you're able to report quickly, easily, effectively, and by the way, in a language that the business understands, the legal department understands, and everyone, all the stakeholders understand. That really helps a lot with transparency. It helps a lot with building the team at the departmental level. So there's a lot in that. Alignment of an organization is extraordinarily difficult and extraordinarily important. You don't want standalone silos. Those KPIs, the measurements, that is the language, that is the interconnectivity between the departments that everyone knows, everyone understands, and you deliver to those goals based on the information that you're reporting up and sideways. So in any so I have an MBA in operations, and I'm a nerd. In any operation, there's only three basic functions: the intake and input function, the transform function, taking that input and transforming it into something usable, and the output function, which is generally a report or maybe a product. If you're in manufacturing, the output is some widget, some product, a screwdriver. When you start out, and by the way, that sounds terrifically uncomplicated, and it is. People make things more complicated than they need to be, but if you start off with the basics of input, transform, output, you can have sub-processes, particularly in the transformation stage, that get executed, but at the end of the day, it's all part of the transformation step. So we're talking about data. Whenever someone complains to me about reports, 99.9% of the time, it is within 10 minutes you have an input part, you have an intake part, you have a data you need to do some hygienic steps. You need to make sure it's coming in clean. And by the way, make sure you're collecting the right data. I mean, this is what's going to drive your KPIs. If you're looking at data, you collect data that matters, that aligns with the stuff you were trying to do and need to report. So never underestimate the importance of having a clean, operational input, transform, output. That's the stuff that drives the information. What does it mean translated to the business? You might want to compare the turnaround time improvements to number of closed deals, or maybe the shortened sales cycle and how legal paid a partner. Well, guess what? We get our sales contracts in, we approve them within 24 hours, we're out the door, and we see a 3-week shortening of closing deals because we give the customer the information they want and need safely through the contract process, and they appreciate that. They don't want to wait around 2 months. They want to wait maybe 48 hours. And by the way, it needs to be right. It needs to be correct. So the input is important. So we're back to that input, transform, output. It's not easy, but simplification, standardization, as much as you can, are important factors when you're looking for that data. Oh, what's another good one? Outside counsel spend. Look at the outside counsel spend, figure out what you're spending, what the hourly rates are, what all the exceptions are. I mean, it behooves organizations and the law firms to get it right, to, have billing guidelines. And guidelines are not rules, they're guidelines. There are rules that can be part of a guideline. So you just don't throw people out the window based on a guideline. That's a suggestion. That may be it's not even up to a best practice. It's something. Now, if it's a rule, you will pay. Computers are very good with rules, and by the way, can report on them. But as so I'd report off the KPI would be billing guidelines, compliance. For the law firm, it's a realization rate thing. For the corporation, it's somewhat realization as well, but it's just having a good, efficient, effective, keeping their law firms happy. You might want to pay them a little more if they pay early and get their stuff right, or but it's an interesting one. It's one that's necessary. It's a little like herding cats, but it can be done. It takes a lot of work, a lot of collaboration. Once again, aligning goals into KPIs that execute for both the in-house counsel and the law firm. I mean, I know this kind of thing sounds pretty simple. Guess what? It is. It's just hard to execute. It's hard to it's herding cats. Humans get involved in a lot of things that maybe they shouldn't. Because you can't cover every edge condition. That's called an exception, and you have an exception queue, and you handle those exceptions, and you find a good guideline or a good rule. And if you have 10 exceptions of the same type, you figure out how to standardize it. So that's a good thing to report on when you're looking for quality. And good collaboration between the firm and your organization. I mean, KPIs rule the world. I mean, that's how you build and drive business. And it's very, I think this is just becoming more common in legal operations as opposed to like a business, like when I was running operations for a bank, we didn't move without defined KPIs that aligned with the strategy of the organization. And if that was a cost reduction, we do cost reduction. If it was, business gets real happy when you're generating revenue or helping people generate. But those ones are important because that makes you part of a profit center and not a cost center. And you should always align. Legal departments just don't, well, maybe some do. They're not just there for providing legal advice. It's very important. Probably the primary part of the job, to reduce legal risk. Legal departments that help build the company and help generate revenue, that's the gold standard. That's the kind of operations department that I would want to run, I would want to work with. We help build, we help consult to drive, not just cost savings. The legal spend in a major corporation, generally speaking, very general, 1 to 4% of overall corporate expense, that's a grain of sand on the beach. So when you're talking to a CEO, we're talking about how the legal department can become more efficient and save money from the legal department. They're talking about, so you're making the grain of sand on the beach a little bit more grainy. Tell them about how you can reduce the labor of the departments that interact with the legal department through something like contracts. Or I'm focusing on contracts, but it could be anything. The best way to do that is using the data and collaborating with your business customers. So if you find zero value contracts or contracts that don't generate revenue, you got to figure out, is this worthwhile to do? Lots of times they live a perpetual life based on someone did this 20 years ago. They're no longer relevant, but they just keep doing it because that's what they've always done. If your legal department can say, I can give you 80 man hours a week back to your sales team or to your business unit, or better, even more, that's a huge win because that's not getting the 1 to 4% spend. That's getting into the mainstream of business spend. Business people notice that and absolutely will appreciate the legal department and what they've done to help reduce the burden on their team. It's my friend Mark Smolek says, we are not a department of no. We're a department of yes, and how can we help you and make you better? That's a good sort of, I don't know if that's a KPI, but it's a good sort of leadership, strong leadership, getting the right resources to execute that understand not just the legal stuff, but the business as a whole. It always starts with, we have a thing. It's called AMPT, A-M-M-P-P-T. So it's a little bit, clock has the, people, process, technology. They're missing stuff in that. They're missing stuff. Not that those aren't three particularly good components, they are. So AMP stands for Aligned, Measure, Manage People, Process, and Technology in support of the business. That's what you need to do. So you'll probably see a website at some point coming pretty soon about amps.com that helps people do that. Because that's, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Guess what you're measuring to? KPIs. Guess what you're managing to? KPIs. How well did our department do supporting the business? And there's lots of data analytics. You can get a lot of information from data. Just make sure your data is clean, because you can get a lot of bad information from data too. doing it in the vacuum, first and foremost. Not working with the business like they should. By the way, that can be hard. Sometimes, oh God, it's legal calling again. I don't want to talk to them. But building those partnerships is very, very, very important and necessary. They're your stakeholders. They're your customers. Go right to the start of the process, the input process. Look at it, understand it. It's not just keeping, getting good data. It's making sure you're asking the right questions, getting the right data, keeping it simple. Simple wins. I'm the kind of guy, if I can't get to something in 3 actions, I abandon it. I abandon it forever. I never come back. So, my developers hate me because I develop software, and if we can't get there in 2 actions, a mouse click, typing in a word, start over. No good. I want to satisfy my customers. My customers, to comply with what we're asking, they need something that is helpful, interesting. And it's also meeting them a little bit on their own terms. So, how do these people work? How can we integrate into that workflow to get what it is we need and ultimately they need? So, and then the last one, it's the hardest and the biggest, it's alignment. The data that doesn't satisfy a problem or provide a benefit to the business, it's just data. You've got to make it into something helpful. So I don't know, did I properly answer that? It's a good question. I think a good underpinning in the business is wonderful. And not just the business that you are in, but in basic business principles. Taking a couple of classes in finance, taking a couple of classes in operations, taking a couple of classes in marketing, I don't even know if they have these, marketing to sales, learning about those things. But much easier to work with people and stakeholders if if you've walked a block in your shoes. Remember, we're a support function. We need to learn to speak their language. I keep hearing in the legal operations circles, they don't understand us. They don't speak our language of law. Guess what? Wonderful if they can. Totally unnecessary. We need to speak the language of business. We're part of a business. Law firm's different. That's what your business is legal. That's when the business is legal. So just things I would do. I've met some very interesting people as of late. Younger people breaking into the operations world. And there's older people too. There's people that are really striving to understand and execute on a good, not only strategic level, but the tactical level you need to do to hit your steps. And that's nice to see. Now there could be some training. Stuff like that. I think you might, one of some business cases that, examples are always good. There's a lot of possibilities for organizations like Legal Ops to provide some education. Sometimes it's just a reminder to people who maybe have graduated with an MBA and if we get into a situation. Sometimes it's hard to see the forest through the trees. And then, the other message, just keep it simple. Maybe I'm a simpleton because I like things simple and easy. I don't want to have to think about how to do something. I want to be able to do it, and I want it to add value. Now, that's not to say I don't think. I think all the time. But, when you have a lot of things to think about, boy, is it ever nice to, have it right smack dab in the wheelhouse. Just, okay, I know how to answer this question. Boom, done. So. this gap between the business and the legal department needs to be bridged and bridged effectively and efficiently.
Gap between business and legal, or legal needs to bridge the gap?
Legal needs the core business and the legal department. Sometimes it's a little siloed. Goes back to KPIs and alignment. Be part of the business. Be part of the business. When you introduce yourself, I work for Microsoft. It's not, I work in the legal department at Microsoft. I work for Microsoft. I perform important work in the legal department, managing contracts or whatever it is you do. Doing legal research, managing litigation. The other thing for legal ops professionals, I roll up my sleeves and get into litigation. It can be challenging, but there's plenty of people that can help you out on it. E-discovery should not be scary. Sometimes I walk around some legal ops conferences, I don't see any electronic discovery. That can be the biggest part of the budget. You have a nasty case, that could spike that expense from 1 to 4 to 10. So, and it absolutely belongs as part of legal operations. Who pays the bill? The organization. The organization pays it through the legal department. So I'd like to see, more inclusion on some of the different functions of the legal operations, in addition to the more integration to the business. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it's the business saying, "Oh, that's legal. I don't want to." They live in their own place. I don't. So it's a two-way street. It's not, one direction. I think there used to be a band. I don't know who came up with that stuff. But I think that's reasonable things to start. Keep it simple.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Input, transform, output.